Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Forewarning, this video is going to be heavy-hearted. I'm going to tell you what happened to my cat Chanel and how she died from anesthesia. I'm going to try and keep it together, but I'm not going to be able to promise anything, so you have been warned. So I'm going to start from the very beginning. I had Chanel from she was only probably 4 weeks old when I first got her. She was a stray of a stray cat. She was on the property of my ex-boyfriend's land at the time, whenever I was 20 or 21. And this stray cat came, had a whole bunch of stray kittens, and you know, they were very small. What happened was the cat never came back. The mother never came back, whether it got hit by a car, it abandoned the kittens. We never really knew. So these kittens were kind of left to fend for themselves. So when I was getting ready to turn 21, and I thought I was in college at the time, and I really wanted to have a pet. I wanted to have a dog, or I wanted to have a cat or something. I always grew up, we had cats and dogs and stuff. They were all outside, of course, when I grew up, but this was gonna be my first pet of my own, and I really, really wanted one. So I decided I'm going to adopt 2 of these kittens and give them a good home, and that's what I wanted to do. So I picked out the 2, and I picked out the first one. Her name was Nala. She was kind of a creamy golden one. She was more one of the older kittens in the litter, and then Chanel, she was actually the runt of the litter. They were so small, and Chanel was the smallest of them all because she was the runt, and she was so small and weak that she never got a chance to eat as much as the other kittens from their mother before she disappeared. I had to feed her with an eyedropper because we didn't know if she was going to survive. She was very small, she was very weak. They were so young that their eyes were still blue and they couldn't see correctly. So, and she kept trying to eat off of Nala. She always tried to suckle at her belly, and then it would cause little irritations on Nala's belly. So I had to feed her with an eyedropper, and I didn't know if she was going to survive. But she did. I kept them alive. About a year later, whenever I had to give Nala up, because Nala was a very outdoorsy kind of cat, and she desperately wanted to be an outdoor cat. So fortunately for us, we had a family friend who owned a farm, and we were able to give her to that farm, and she was much happier. It was one of the hardest things I had to do at the time, to give her up, but I knew eventually she was much, much happier than being stuck in our little 2-bedroom apartment at the time. Chanel, on the other hand, was very happy because Nala was kind of beating up on her all the time, and Chanel was kind of being abused by her a little bit, and she loved being the center of our attention. She was spoiled, and she was just, you could tell that she knew how lucky and fortunate she was. There was just something in her that let us know that she knew that she could have had a much worse life, that she was very thankful for us. And likewise, needed her as much as she needed me, I think, if not more. And to explain a little bit on this, that I grew up in a family that was very abusive and very rough and very brittle and fragile. So it was very hard growing up in that kind of household. I was never close to any of my family, so I never really had anybody I could connect to completely, because everyone was dealing with their own substance abuse issues, their own anger issues, their own health issues, brought on by themselves pretty much. And I was very, very alone and in need of distance from my family, which I got. Whenever I turned 18, I decided that I was going to move out as soon as I possibly could whenever I went to college, and I did. And then I became independent, you know, thereafter. So whenever I turned, and I was, like I said, I always had cats, I always had dogs, they were always outside, I always snuck them inside whenever I was not allowed, and I got into horrible trouble for that kind of stuff. But so when I went to college, it was kind of hard because I never had a pet during those 2 or 3 years whenever I was in my college apartment. So when these kittens came up, I decided, yes, I'm gonna take them, and these are gonna be my cats. And that's what I did. So fast forward, Chanel had been part of our lives for the past 10 years. She would have been 10 this August. And she was the love of our lives. My husband and I have been together for almost 10 years, so actually Chanel has been longer in my life than my husband. I had gotten her 3 months before him and I became officially a couple, but all in all, he and I have been a unit for all this time. We've been a package deal this whole entire time. It's been the most beautiful family that I could have ever come up with for myself. And yeah, so we were in our apartment for that long, and then about 3 years ago, we bought our house that we live in now, and she's been with us ever since. She had this soul of, I can't even explain her soul because I've had a lot of cats growing up, and I've never ever been around a cat like her. She had this soul where you could stare into her eyes and it just felt like you knew what she was feeling and you knew what she was thinking. And you could feel the love that she had for you when you were interacting with her. It was the strangest thing for me, and it was one of the most rarest feelings I think I've ever had, ever. It was beautiful. It was really beautiful. I know that people probably think that was weird and everything, but like when I would come home, I could just feel like, without saying a word, without communicating verbally, the language and the communication that we had with each other was so far beyond what I think that most people have. And it was really beautiful. It was a very special connection. She was the sweetest, most lovable, kind, caring cat. Most cats, if they're, angry, or if they're threatened, or if they're hurt, they resort to biting, scratching, hissing, growling, those kinds of things. She's never once did that with either of us. She was a long-haired cat, and she was a little bit heavier, so she would have trouble cleaning her backside whenever she'd go to her litter box, and sometimes we would have to clean her up, use scissors and use clippers to trim her on the backside. And this was a very unpleasant thing for her, both her and us, because we were afraid that we were going to hurt her, and it was very sensitive around that area. So, she never once hissed, scratched, bit us, and I'm pretty sure if I was being cleaned like that, I would be scratching or biting whoever was cleaning me too. But she had this trust in us that we knew that we weren't going to hurt her. She had this feeling that we loved her and we were going to do everything just to protect her and keep her best interest in our hearts. And I think she really knew that because of how she behaved in those circumstances. So fast forward, it was about last year this time. Right now as I'm making this video, it's summer of 2019. Last year, summer of 2018, every year she has her annual physical checkup at the vet's office. So she went in for a checkup last year. We had noticed a pencil eraser sized lump on her belly. And it was just a little bump, little skin bump. So we had her checked out, and our vet said, I looked at this, it looks just like a bump. I'm not really concerned about it. If it changes dramatically in the next several months, please bring her back in and we'll take a further look into it. So no big deal. Brought her home, everything was great. Her appetite was always really high, her energy levels were always high, she was able to move in every single which way she wanted to move. She was a 17-pound cat, and she was able to jump up from the floor to the couch or the dresser, even though she wasn't allowed on things like that, but she was able to do that. All in all, we weren't really concerned. From that point on until about 9 months in, so through about 3 months prior, this lump grew on her. It ended up growing from the size of a pencil eraser to the size of about a nickel, I would say, on her belly. And at this point, it started to get caught, it started to pus a little bit, and it started to get caught into her long fur on her belly, and she would start to pull at that fur trying to get clear of it, because I'm sure it irritated her. So we would try to keep it clean, we would try to keep the area shaved around this bump so she wouldn't be irritated and she wouldn't bleed. Again, this didn't affect her in any way. She had a good appetite, good energy, good behavior. She never whimpered when we touched it. It just seemed like a bump. So we took her back in for her annual checkup this summer, about a month and a half ago. We had her checked, and our vet looked at it and said, okay, yeah, we think it's going to be time to take a little sample of it, send it out for testing, and see what's going on with it, because I think we need to get it checked at this point. So we said okay, and we're pretty worried at that point, because it has grown and it has looked worse than it did before. So we get the test back about 4 days after we got that, when we learned about that, and they said, okay, well, while it's not cancerous at the moment, while it's been growing and pussing and bleeding a little bit just because of the irritation, I think it would be best to remove it. This is what our vet told us. And this was the same vet that had looked at it last year. And he said, because, even though while it's not like that right now, he said it could potentially turn into cancer. It could be connected to our organs internally. It could rupture, and it could cause a lot more pain or other health conditions later on if we don't take care of this now. So he said, absolutely. We learned of the price estimation of the surgery. We said, absolutely, no matter what cost it was, we were gonna take care of this, because we were expecting to have her for at least another 10 years. He called on a Wednesday and wanted to schedule the surgery for the following Wednesday, and he wanted her there early in the morning at 7 a.m. So I said, yes, absolutely. So from that point on, I was getting a little worried, because I just thought, I didn't know what this bump was. It could be an underlying issue that we didn't know about, and we just wanted to take care of it. So we had it scheduled, and I was, worried up until that point. The night before, they had advised us that we needed to not let her eat after midnight of the surgery, and restrict the food from her at 6 a.m. the following morning of her surgery. So I did, and I always fed her at night, because she always liked to have snacks and stuff at night. She'd always wander down and, eat a little bit in the middle of the night. That's just what she did, so I always left her a little bit of food. And I remember feeding her for the last time and pulling the bowl up at midnight, thinking that, it's fine. She'll be hungry, but I'll feed her as soon as she gets home after her surgery. Went to bed, and at this point in time, for about a month, I would say, I was getting into the habit of waking up at 5 a.m. every morning as part of my summer goals and rituals to get things done and to clear my head before I had to go to work and all that kind of stuff. So I was getting up at 5 a.m. This morning was no different. She came down with me, and her and I, we always did our little routines every morning. I would feed her, except I didn't feed her that morning. I would feed her, and then I'd open the door so she could go out on our deck and watch the birds early in the morning, and I would sit at the dining room table of our breakfast table, work on my computer. She'd jump up on my lap, cuddle for a little bit, she'd play, and we would just have a routine. So we did that this morning. And it was just like a normal morning. She was wondering where her food was because she loved to eat. That cat loved to eat. That was her favorite thing. She was definitely my daughter. And, it was a good morning. 6 a.m. came, and I took away her water and loved on her. Went upstairs and got ready, and then asked my husband to help me put her in her crate so we could take her to the vet's office, because I was going to just drop her off before I went to work. So I did that, and I took her to the vet's office, went into the room, and starting to sign some paperwork and everything, all the normal stuff of, yes, please call me if anything happens that requires extra money, or if anything happens during surgery that they absolutely need to do, I authorized to go ahead. I signed all that kind of stuff. I said, yes, I'll clean her and make sure she doesn't lick the surgery site whenever we got her home, all that kind of stuff. And I remember whenever she was sitting there, she was always really anxious when we took her to the vet, because when we'd go on vacation, we'd leave her and we'd board her there for about a week's time. So every time she'd get into her stupid crate I hate that crate. But every time she'd get into her crate, she would get anxious. And, she was anxious now. She hated it. All the other times, she was always so anxious that when we would try to talk to her or coax her or pet her or something in her crate, she kind of just ignored us because she was dealing with so much anxiety. But after I signed all the paperwork, and she was sitting right next to me, I put my hand in the door, and she rubbed up against me, which was kind of unusual for her. And I didn't know that that was the last time that I was gonna see her alive. I told her, I promised her that I was gonna bring her home that night. She hated going to the vet's office. They were so good to her. But, you know, she just wanted to be home. She loved her home. And that's why I promised her, don't worry, I'm bringing you home tonight. So she took her out and I went to work. So I went to work and I was worried about her and everything. They said they were going to do the surgery a little bit later in the morning because I think they had another pet lined up for surgery that day. So, you know, I was trying to just get on with my morning, and I had scheduled to pick her up at about 3:30 that afternoon after her surgery so I could get her home and take care of her. And I was working, and it was weird because, like, I was the only one kind of working in my office space at that moment, just because I think people had appointments or whatever it was, so I was the only one there. And about 20 minutes before I got the inevitable phone call, about 20 minutes in, 20 minutes before, I was typing away, I was working, and then I got this sinking, sharp, god-awful feeling in the pit of my stomach, and her face came into my mind, and I just felt sick all of a sudden. And of course I was worried about her, and I just kind of thought, like, oh wow, okay, you're really worried about her, you're stressing right now, you're just thinking about her, she's gonna be okay, you need to brush this off and everything's gonna be fine, you're just really worried about her. It was the weirdest feeling, because I think at that moment, at that very moment, I think that's whenever she left, and I think our connection was broken at that point. Because about 15 or 20 minutes later, I get my phone call that I was expecting, because I was expecting them to call and say, hey, we're done with surgery, everything is fine, she's recovering, we're gonna look after her, blah, blah, blah. So I got that phone call, and I excused myself to go into one of our conference rooms at work, close the door, and then I'll never forget this because these words are haunting me moment to moment every single day since this happened. And it was our vet who was doing the surgery, who checked her out last summer, who recommended us doing the surgery, and he said, this is Dr. blah 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 from the vet's office. Chanel responded badly to the anesthesia and she passed away. And I immediately lost it. I couldn't comprehend it at the moment. And I lost it. And I fell to the floor, and I, hung up with him and everything. And don't really remember our conversation all that much, to be honest. I just remember hanging up and calling my husband and screaming to him that she had died. And he said, I'm leaving work. I'm coming home. So I barely made it out the conference room before, like, I fell to the floor, and I was just hysterical. And my coworkers were comforting me, and they were asking what was wrong, and I told them, and I said, I'm leaving, I'm gonna go home. And they said, obviously you can't drive, you're in no state to drive. And I'm glad they did, because at that time I wasn't thinking, there's no way I probably could have drove home at that point. So they called my husband for me and had him pick me up at my workplace. He came and picked me up, because all that's kind of a blur and I don't really remember what was going on, but he picked me up, got into his car, and we went straight to the vet's office. Got to the vet's office, and it was so weird because all the lights were dim in the main lobby, and there was a picture frame on the front counter, and there was a glowing candle, one of those battery operated candles. It was flickering, and in the picture frame, I don't remember really what it said, but it was saying something that, like, we lost an angel today, please say a prayer for it. And it was for her. And they brought us into a room, and we were sitting there. We didn't have to say anything. They just all knew as soon as we walked in. They just knew what was going on. They weren't saying, like, oh, what are you here for? They just, because we were so close with them. She was there all the time. We made connections in relationships with these people. They are wonderful people. And they loved her. They really loved her. And then the vet came in and was telling us what happened, and I guess apparently they were getting ready to do surgery, and they administered the anesthesia, the pain medication for her prior to surgery to put her to, you know, in sedation so they could operate on her. And within, he said, 30 to 120 seconds, she had passed away. And she responded badly to it. She couldn't, her system couldn't take it. And I don't know why, but it was just like instant, he said. He said they tried to resuscitate her, they tried to do everything. He said nothing was like out of place. He said, I've done this a million other times. He just didn't know what was wrong. It was just something her little body didn't like. So then I asked to see her, and they brought her to me. And she was laying there on the towel, and I was able to hold her in my arms and say goodbye. My husband and I were able to say goodbye to her. We held her for a while. At this moment, definitely not long enough. I wish I would have spent another day there holding her. But I know you can't do that. But I held her, and we talked to her a little bit. Told her how much we loved her. She was still warm. She looked at peace, though. She really looked at peace. She had her little paw taped, I guess, where the anesthesia was administered into her veins. But she was never operated on. They never even got to that point. So they don't even know what was, you know, what the bump was. And at that time, we could have ordered an autopsy, but at that point, I was not thinking clearly, and I never ordered one. I got to tell her that I loved her very much. My husband did too. We were sending her off as best as we could have. I hope so. I really hope so. And they took her back. And she was the most beautiful little thing. So then we left and we went home, and of course just bawled and cried, and I was so angry because she was just there at our house, and all of a sudden she wasn't there anymore. So this happened on a Wednesday, and of course I work a 9-to-5 job, my husband does too, and we were supposed to be working until Friday, so we decided to take the rest of the week off and mourn for her. So that's what we did, and we pretty much camped out on our couch from Wednesday morning after it happened to Sunday, celebrating her little life in our home and in our life. We couldn't sleep in our bed because she spent all of her nights sleeping directly on top of me. This is how we slept. She was so close and warm and loving and just the kindest, sweetest, most beautiful little soul. And being in that bed without her was just so foreign and so disgusting to me. I didn't want to be there. We camped out on the couch for pretty much every single one of those nights that we were home, and we didn't want to be anywhere near our room. Pretty much didn't eat, didn't sleep, just kept thinking that she was just gonna be trotting down the hallway or climbing up on the couch to snuggle with us, or, you know, we're gonna hear her meow. It was the strangest thing how empty our house and how quiet our house was after she'd gone. It was the most eerie thing I think I've ever experienced. And before we took her to the vet that morning, she, you know, did her little track in her same little path that she always did, and she had these footprints on our carpet right by the wall by our stairs. And for weeks I couldn't walk over that. I couldn't vacuum when I was cleaning because I just felt like she was right there. They sent her off for cremation because they asked us what we wanted to do with the remains of her body. We live in a townhousing development, so we're not allowed to dig and, you know, bury animals on our property. It's just part of our homeowners association and the laws and regulations around where we live. So we said, yeah, absolutely, we want her cremated. And so they sent her off, and they took care of all the costs for us. We didn't have to pay anything. They took care of everything. Because I'm not lying when I say that they cared for her as much as we cared for her, because they were her family too there. They made this little like clay sculpture with her footprint into it, and then they put her name at the top and put little hearts around it for our keepsake, for a keepsake for us. And we wanted to go and talk to the vet anyway before we even knew that she was ready to be picked up. We went down, and our vet was very kind and very consoling, very considerate and compassionate about everything. He answered some questions that we had, and there was nothing else he could have done during this whole procedure. He said he's had his practice open for 14 years, and it had only happened one other time, and it was a mistake on one of their parts, on a technician's part, so that was a bad case. He said, but this was only the second time this has ever happened, and the first time that it has ever happened where an animal had responded negatively to the anesthesia as if it was just poison to her body. So, you know, we've talked a lot. My husband and I have been talking about this. We've been trying to figure things out and understand it. And we just had to come to the conclusion that this was meant to be. That whether you believe in God or the universe or whatever it is that you believe in, that this was the plan. This was what was meant to be. This was fate. As cruel as it is, and as hurtful and as sad as this is, I have to believe that this was meant to be, and something was meant to come from it. Whether it was a lesson to teach us, or whether she had bigger and better things to do in the afterlife, and she was ready for something bigger. I have to believe that. She had taught us so much. She had taught us so much. More than I've ever been able to learn from another person or another being ever in my life. I'm not that old, but she has been more my family than my own family. And she was just like my daughter. And to lose her has been the hardest thing I have ever experienced in my life. And this is including my dad's passing 3 years ago. And I don't want to sound cold or anything, but, you know, I was very upset with my dad's passing, but, this was tough. Losing her was like losing a part of me. I poured everything I had into her, and everything that she had was so beautiful and was so good. And I think that's why I'm angry right now, is she was such a good thing in my life and added so much to my life, to my husband's life, and to the world. She was a goodness that this world desperately needs. And for her to be just taken away is very hurtful. And I know I can't look at it that way. I know that I need to see it as, you know, God's bigger plan, or the universe's bigger plan. Whatever you believe, I believe in God, and I think that God has a bigger plan for her. I think that because she was so full of love and so full of soul, and she was so beautiful as a soul, someone else needed her, or she had bigger things that she needed to accomplish for the betterment of this world. I think a big lesson here is that animals and pets are not forever, and I understand that. I knew that I wasn't going to keep her forever, but I thought was going to at least to keep her for another 10 years. So I know that was coming one day, but I didn't know it was going to be this soon. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to say goodbye to her, but I had to. And it's been tough, but I have to trust that she's gonna be there for me one day. She's gonna be waiting for me. And I have to know that, I have to believe that she's somewhere better. She's far better off than I am right now, being without her. What I want to do with this is, you know, she was so good. She was so pure and innocent, full of love and beautiful and just a good soul. She had so much beauty and positivity within her that I don't want to let that die with her. My goal with this whole thing right now is I want to take everything that she had given me and taught me, and I want to share that with other people. I want to make other people the way that she made me feel. Something that I'm struggling with right at the moment, because I'm feeling very bitter. I'm feeling very angry. Just being very negative and very angry at the moment about this whole thing. So it may not be right now. I'm trying. I'm, you know, piece minute by minute or second by second every day there's something that is, you know, becoming a little bit more positive, or I'm finding a little happiness here, or whatever it is. And I know it's going to take a lot of time, but eventually I want to put all of my faith, all of my energy and soul into the goodness of this world, because I think things like this can make you better. And I think this was a problem with my own family, that when things went wrong, or when they got bad fortune or whatever it was, they turned inward and allowed that bitter seed to grow within them. And I am dead set on not letting that happen to me. And I want to turn that around, and I want to take everything that was good about her and I want to give it back. I don't know how I'm going to do that yet, but I want to do that. And I want to fight against that bitterness that is desperately wanting to like flourish within inside my soul right now. But I know that's not what she would have wanted, and I know that's not what she stood for, and I know that's not what she would have wanted for me. So I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna move forward, and hopefully things can grow from this, because I will be damned if I let this beauty of hers die with her. I'm not gonna do it. So I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to share that story with you. If you've ever lost a pet, you'll know how desperate, how awful and horrible and sad and miserable it is to lose a pet. They're like our kids. They're like family, but they're, you know, they're not people. So I know it's like, it's different for some people to realize and recognize, but for me, she'll be more of my family than I've ever had. And it's been a struggle, but if you've ever had something like that, I know how you feel. Just know that you're not alone, and just know that you're gonna be okay. Things are gonna suck for a little bit, and but you can make the choice. You have choices here. You can allow this to make you bitter and angry and hate the world, or you can use that relationship that you had with that special pet or that special someone. If you've lost someone special to you, you can take that connection and you can do good with it. You can spread that out. You can give it back to other people or pets who are in need. Perhaps there's another pet who needs a home and they're suffering. Maybe that's your way of doing it. Or maybe there's a charity that you want to pour your heart and soul into. Maybe that's way. Maybe there's a nonprofit that you'd like to work for. Or maybe there's just a kindness that you can do by listening to a friend in need. There's all these things that you can do in order to better the world and better our friends and our relatives and our family and people, strangers, perfect strangers. And I think that's the whole point of this, of going through life and experiencing things like this, is that there's goodness in this world, but you just have to recognize it and not let bad things and bad fortune and sometimes a little devil on your shoulder destroy you and completely take over your soul. To fight against that bitterness that wants to build within you, and to recognize that, you know, life is good and there are always going to be love as long as you continue to grow that and not let it die. So I know this was a long video, but if you guys have gotten to this point, then let me know down in the comments below. Maybe say something like, rest in peace, Chanel. And I'll know that you've made it this far. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to me and watching me cry. It's definitely been therapeutic for me to talk about this in a video form. I hope you guys got something from this video, and I appreciate you listening, taking the time out to hear what I had to say about this, because she was my baby. She was my girl. So I hope you guys are having a great day. I hope you go forward from this point and make a point and an effort to put more love out into the world, because we all know we need it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Hopefully a lot happier than this one. Take care, guys, and thank you for watching again. Bye.